Hello. Am I under Rebecca's?
If you would put addresses, costs for them, basically what your expectations are for each of the three properties. Thanks everybody for being here. We have about 25 people registered, so here they're starting to come in.
Hey, Eileen, can you hear me?
I can.
Good. I've been having microphone issues all day. So, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Eric Nankervis, just doing a quick sound check, please. Okay, thank you.
I can hear you.
Well, it looks like all of our speakers are here.
Yes, Sherilyn.
Yes.
Thank you. It's been a busy day here at MACH. And this is a nice crowd.
Yes.
You can take it away, Sherilyn.
Okay. Well, we're so glad everyone could join us. We know that you have a lot of responsibilities and we appreciate you taking a little bit of time out to visit with us here at MACH. So our resource hours are every 2 months, and the resource hours are a chance to talk about some of the resources that we have in our area for those who are not in stable housing. This particular resource hour is on disaster response. So we're here to talk about shelter and housing resources that can be offered during a disaster or an emergency. And Tasha Cooper is the executive director of HandsOn River Region. She assisted this committee with the design of this particular resource hour. And Tasha, we would love to hear
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. And I'm sorry, I always like to be on video, but for some reason, when I had my video on, my system was messing up. I'm having a Wednesday that feels like a Monday, so I apologize. But one of the reasons that we wanted to have this discussion today, and as a MACH board member, and also as an agency that deals with 211, we, of course, during times of disaster, seen influx of needs that we already have when it comes to housing related services, whether that be people just needing temporary housing and or hotels or whatever it be till they can get back to where they are, or their home is completely gone. And sometimes there's a lot of misunderstanding around the processes when it comes to being affected by disaster and losing your home, or even temporarily losing your home in times of disaster. So HandsOn River Region is part of the Alabama VOAD. That's the Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. And so the panel that you see today are all active members of VOAD. And our VOAD meets on a regular basis, and sometimes that's just our regularly scheduled meetings. And during times of disaster, that might be every day, it might be twice a week, it might be once a week. It just kind of depends on what's going on. But we meet and we try to coordinate with our nonprofit and faith-based organizations locally and nationally to try to do the best we can to service those who are in need in times of disaster. And that goes through 211 as well. So Becky Booker is with the United Ways of Alabama. She's also the 211 statewide lead. And so I know that she and I work hand in hand together on a lot of these services. Sherilyn, did you have anything you wanted me to say specifically about each organization, or I just wanted to give you guys a general idea of why everybody is here today?
just a general idea.
Okay.
And then I've got a little bit more information about some of the organizations.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
We're really grateful that that these presenters were able to join us today. Becky, we had expected you to be able to go first. Becky Booker represents the United Ways of Alabama. She serves as the executive director. Her board of directors is made up of Alabama's 23 local and autonomous United Ways across the state. Her commendable leadership led to the creation of this statewide organization and to creation of a statewide resource database known as Alabama's 211 system. And if you're not already in Alabama's 211 system, I hope you will join. This is such a fantastic resource for connecting with those in need. The recovery and rebuilding process after hurricanes and tornadoes are among many of her organizational concerns. So, and while Becky is getting ready to talk to us, I just wanted to point out to everyone that several of us have already put our addresses and our names in the chat. And if you put those in there, that will help I link capture exactly who's in attendance. Ready when you are.
You're on mute, dear Becky.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you, Becky.
I don't know. I had computer gremlins today as well. So today is just one of those days. Thanks for having me. I'm Becky Booker with United Ways of Alabama. I have been involved with disaster response since 2004. When Hurricane Ivan hit Alabama and actually devastated such a large part of our state, it was at that time that the United Ways tasked me to become more active in disaster. So I, of course, joined Alabama VOAD, and I encourage everybody to join Alabama VOAD. It's Alabama's voluntary organizations active in disaster. I've been president, I've been vice president, I've been secretary, and now I'm treasurer. And they tease me and say I'm treasurer for life. And I'm like, okay, treasurer works for me. That's a good gig. But anyway, so with Alabama VOAD, I became involved in disaster. It was at that point that United Ways of Alabama worked with the Governor's Office of Volunteer Services in late 2004 and early 2005 to establish the Governor's Emergency Relief Fund. We did establish that fund, and that fund has survived 3 governors. It was established when Governor Riley was governor, then stayed when Governor Bentley, and then has remained under Governor Ivey. Right now, one of the largest supporters we have to the fund is Bo Jackson through his Bo Bikes Bama event that he does every year to remember all of the folks who lost their lives on April 27th, 2011 from the super tornado outbreak that we had in Alabama. Those funds, while they help or individuals who have been affected by disasters to rebuild their homes, in certain cases, we've helped with businesses and nonprofits when they've been hit hard. But it's also one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we have helped build over 72 community storm shelters across Alabama. I live in Autauga County, and as you know, in January, we had a tornado come through the northern part of the county that ended up killing 6 people. I was aware of one of the storm shelters that we helped to build at Posey's Crossroads, and the folks who died were about 2 miles from that community storm shelter. And I asked the folks at Posey's Crossroads, you know, how many people showed up for the storm that day, and they indicated that they had more than 80 people in that community storm shelter. So I felt, while my heart was broken that those 6 folks didn't go to the shelter, it was also very warmed by the fact that there were folks who did go and take advantage of that shelter. So we know that folks are using the shelter. One of the things that we know is that we don't have enough shelters. And so we're currently working with organizations like the Black Belt Foundation to put more storm shelters in rural counties over in those western Black Belt counties. But as I mentioned, we've also helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Alabamians rebuild their homes after a storm with the Governor's Emergency Relief Fund. And as many of you are aware, United Ways play a large role in their communities and helping rebuild folks' lives after storms, either through financial or through human resources. So United Way as a system, we're committed to helping during disasters, and that's something that we do as a collective. It's like when the storm, hit the Selma area as well, that United Way was a one-person United Way. So all of the other United Ways in the state rallied around that United Way and provided resources to not only ensure that the United Way had what it needed, but the community had what it needed. And now they're in the process of recovery. I don't know exactly what you wanted me to talk about, but is there anything in any specific questions? 211 is the number that we have folks call, whether they want to access help or whether they want to give help during times of disaster. We work very close with the Emergency Management Agency, and 211 is actually written into the Emergency Operations Plan as the number to call for all non-emergencies. So I remember after the 2011 tornadoes, that first week, the first 7 days after that April 27th 2011 tornado, we had taken over 40,000 contacts between telephone calls, text messages, chats online. I don't know that we've ever been busier than we were that week, but we continue disaster after disaster to respond to the needs. Most recently, and hurricanes Sally and Zeta, and then all of the numerous tornadoes that we've had across the state. We've tried to work and partner with the folks in the local community to not only provide the information to the clients that's needed, but collect the information for the partners so that they can respond to the needs of the folks who have been impacted by disasters in those communities in a much more unduplicated fashion, which, in our hope is to make that person whole, or as whole as possible, as quickly as possible.
Becky, you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that you invite us all to join VOAD. What would be the process for us to join? Like, do we join as organizations? Do we join as individuals?
I would encourage you to join as an organization. We do have and have had individual memberships in the past. So for individuals who are retired that don't have an organization necessarily to partner with, a lot of, for example, we have a lot of folks who belong to the Baptist churches that are part of the Baptist disaster mission. So while they are retired, they're affiliated through VOAD, through that Baptist association. But then you could have an individual, Tasha, I don't know if you remember or not, we had an individual that was retired Air Force that had a disaster background. And she was actually like the VOAD chair in Elmore County. And she was like an individual who had joined because her passion was emergency management, and she wasn't necessarily affiliated with any organization after her retirement. So it really depends on what works best for you. To be a full-fledged voting member of VOAD, it's $50 a year. So it doesn't break anybody's bank, not, the organization or an individual. You can be a part of VOAD and be a non-voting member as well. We do not exclude or discriminate based on someone's ability to pay. But we do share a lot of information. It's good if you want to help people in times of disaster. It's also a great way to find out the best way to help during times of disaster. I don't want to take Stephanie's thunder, but one of the things that drives us people mean well, and they go out and they collect all these donations, and they'll have truckloads of stuff, and then they'll call us and be like, okay, come get this stuff that we've collected for the victims. Now we need you to come pick it up and take it to them. And that's just the worst thing ever,
Yeah.
And so being a part of VOAD, you can sort of find out what the needs are ahead of time and plan better. And that's why we always encourage our faith-based organizations that if they're not a part of the state VOAD, at least be part of your local VOADs. And if you don't have a local VOAD, start one.
And hey, this is Tasha, and I'm gonna, interject a little bit too. As an executive committee member of Alabama VOAD, I will say, I just want to reiterate, even if you're a new organization just starting out and the $50 might break the bank for you, you can still join our calls and get in on the communication. You just cannot be a voting member of VOAD. But I think there is, and locally, as somebody who lives in Montgomery, and we can all on this call attest to this as well, I think There have been some disasters back to back in our area where we didn't have a lot of folks from Montgomery who were part of Alabama VOAD. And so the triaging and the connectivity that we have in a lot of areas of the state, because there are areas of the state that are very active in VOAD. Because we didn't have that, I think there was some misunderstanding and missing pieces about, what is available in our community, how we can work together to get things done, how you can access VOAD and leverage VOAD to help your community in times of disaster. So I would encourage, if for some reason $50 is going to break the bank, still, your organization should at least sit in on the meetings. I think it's beneficial.
Becky, there's one more question that I want to ask you about, and then I think Steffi's going to take more of the VOAD part of this story. Since you are working with the whole 911, the whole 211 system, you're able to see people's, you're able to see kind of the impact of a disaster. From what I've seen in the disasters that I have volunteered at myself, it looks like we are losing housing fairly quickly. That a lot of these poor areas get hit by disaster, and then I've been to homes where people are living like in very limited part of their home where they are living with damage for long periods of time. Is that something that you're seeing statewide?
I don't know what the answer to that is. Some people, so rental properties is a problem. A lot of times when you have rental properties, so voluntary organizations will not come in and repair or make repair to any kind of rental properties or second properties, that sort of thing. So that's one problem, is that there's a vacuum there to come in and rebuild properties where people might rent or lease, because the individuals sometimes will receive insurance money and it's easier for them just to walk away than to rebuild. So that's an issue, and that's a local governmental issue that I can't help solve that problem. As far as individuals who owned their homes yet maybe didn't have insurance or were underinsured, that is something that we are trying to fix. I know one of the problems that we've had, take for instance, Autauga and Elmore counties. We know that we had 200 people that either were uninsured or underinsured between the two counties, and it may have been a little bit more than that. We've done so much outreach to try to get those folks to come and apply for long-term recovery. And there's a reluctancy there that we don't understand. And we've tried to reach out to these people in so many different ways. We've tried text messaging, we've tried social media, we've tried email, and at our last long-term recovery meeting for Autauga and Elmore counties, we just said, we've got this little bit of seed money, let's send letters out to everybody. So we're going to actually mail letters. Problem is, some of these folks, we're not going to be able to send them a letter unless they put in a forwarding address, because their house is gone at that address, right? It just got completely wiped off the face of the earth. So getting people to understand what long-term recovery is, and that there are no strings attached to help them rebuild their homes, has been a bigger problem this time in these most recent storms than I've ever seen in the last, 20 years, the nearly 20 years that I've been doing this. I don't know what it is, but we're having a hard time getting homeowners, that were either uninsured or underinsured, to come to the table so that we can try to help them build back. And I've heard that this is a problem in the more in like Dallas, Autauga, and Elmore counties, than they're having per se in Hell and Greene counties. And that's because they've been doing the rebuilds in Hell and Greene for multiple years now, because those two counties have been hit, it seems like yearly, by tornadoes. So I don't understand. I don't know how we fix that. I don't know how we get the word out to these folks that long-term recovery groups are bona fide groups that will help you rebuild your home without strings attached.
Okay. I didn't notice any other questions in the chat for you. So let's go to Stephanie Coker, and Stephanie, you're going to talk to us a little bit about the VOAD angle of it. And then if we get any more questions, if people could drop questions in the comments, if you have any questions that come up while we're talking to Stephanie and to Eric. Stephanie Coker is with the Governor's Office of Volunteer Services. She's the Volunteer Engagement and Emergency Management Director at the Governor's Office. Within the state's Emergency Operations Plan, Ms. Coker's office is the lead agency for volunteer and donations management, and it is a state voluntary agency liaison to faith-based and voluntary agencies. They coordinate the role of the volunteer organizations active in disaster. That's the VOAD that we've just been talking about, helping local communities mobilize resources and develop long-term recovery committees, and assisting communities to efficiently and effectively recover from disasters.
Good afternoon, everyone. As she mentioned, my name is Stephanie Coker. I'm the Emergency Management Director here at GOVS and also the Volunteer Engagement Director. So a little bit about our agency, some of the things that we do is we are the Governor's Office, obviously Volunteer Services. We're the Alabama State Service Commission. We administer 10 state AmeriCorps programs. More importantly, for this call, we're the liaison to faith-based and community-based organizations and nonprofits. We assist with FEMA Disaster Case Management Grant, the Governor's Emergency Relief Fund, as Becky mentioned that. We're responsible for the Ready Alabama campaign and volunteer engagement. And a breakdown of those as far as preparedness, response, and recovery. Our preparedness for the Ready Alabama campaign, some of the things that we've done in the past to assist with that is Be Ready Camp, Ready Alabama Preparedness Day, Ready Sunday, and Prepare-a-thons. Our training sessions, we try to participate in as many training sessions as possible. We just completed a G288 VRC training in Mobile in April. We will be offering another training session here in Montgomery in September. I will distribute flyers for that. If anyone would like to be copied on that flyer, our ALVOAD does send that out for us, an EMA, but if you want to list your information in the chat, I'll be happy to include you in that information. But the G288 and VRC is going to be local volunteer and donations management, which, as Becky mentioned, is so important in a disaster. One of the things that we teach is, people will donate coats in a warm climate. People will donate things that aren't usable in a disaster, or they will over donate things that aren't needed. So that training session would help to prepare someone in your VOAD or long-term recovery group for managing those sorts of things. The VRC is the Volunteer Reception or Registration Center. You'll hear that referred to interchangeably. But if you can be prepared in your counties to have someone to manage that VRC, you will be worlds ahead of the game. We won't have to call Becky and Tasha and beg them to come help us set up a VRC. But like I said, if you have that set up ahead of time and you want to attend those trainings in order to be prepared, it is just vital. We also offer CERT training through the Alabama Fire College. We're offering a session in Mobile, June 7th through 9th. We are also planning to launch a virtual VRC training session the last week of May. That's our projected launch, but it will be this summer, and that will be more readily available to folks that can't travel to our regular training sessions. Our response role, we hold a seat at the State Emergency Operations Center under the Human Services branch. So when we're activated, we activate there under Human Services. We're the lead agency for volunteer and donations. And what that means is state warehousing, VRCs, and local volunteer and donations coordinators. We partner with 211, VOAD groups, and non-VOAD groups. And I'll dive a little deeper into that momentarily, but we assist with volunteer registration. We've just launched a Galaxy Digital online platform. And we have linked that with some of our United Ways, with Tasha's HandsOn River region. And what that does is that enables us to pre-register volunteers in the event that we have a disaster or in the event that there is a need. But it also enables us to post quickly for emergency situations, such as the situation that we saw in Camp Hill recently, where they had a freak hailstorm and 90% of the community of 1,000 people was affected. That would have enabled us to post that opportunity and have volunteers quickly, because in a community of 1,000 people, you know, even if everyone showed up, which was not possible, we still could have used more volunteers. We also match donations. And what I mean by that is we solicit unmet needs during a disaster. We also solicit unmet needs when there's not a disaster, but we'll reach out to county EMA directors, faith-based organizations, those types of things, and say, hey, are you aware of a need that we are not aware of? And then we work with VOAD groups, COAD groups to match that need with a partner that can meet it. So that's basically our role, you know, as far as helping the community. But we monitor social media, emails, calls, and text. We're available at Ready Alabama and at Serve Alabama. And also, as Becky mentioned, we are the state VAL here, which is the Voluntary Agency Liaison. We partner with ALVOAD, state agencies, FEMA, and long-term recovery committees in order to, quote, recover from a disaster. We hold a seat on the board of the Governor's Emergency Relief Fund, so we have one vote for that fund. We support disaster preparedness, response, and recovery efforts by serving as the lead agency for volunteer and donations management as prescribed in Alabama's Emergency Operations Plan. We assist with the activation and reactivation of long-term recovery committees. I feel like some of the counties that go a while without damage, maybe forget's the wrong word, but they don't recall the need for a long-term recovery committee until something hits again. And so sometimes it's the case where their long-term recovery committee is there, but it hasn't been active in a while, or, you know, some of the members have moved on, those types of things. So we'll assist with those as best we can. But even when there's not a disaster, if that can fold under your VOAD or continue to meet quarterly or, you know, at least yearly, it's best if you can keep that strengthened. But our mission statement here is to increase an ethic of service and volunteerism in the state of Alabama, strengthen the capacity of Alabama's faith and community-based organizations, and promote collaboration among individuals and organizations striving to meet some of the greatest needs in our state. The way that we are able to assist with that is through our Alabama VOAD, voluntary organizations active in disaster. So we can reach out to partners such as HandsOn River Region 211, Mennonite Disaster, Lutheran Disaster, Feeding Alabama. We're able to connect all these unmet needs through our partners and our volunteers. We, you know, keep logs in the midst of disasters that show us what community-based and faith-based organizations are offering sheltering, who's taking donations, those types of things. So we liaison through those disasters with our partners. And we are throwing around the term VOAD. I'm sure most of you are familiar with what VOAD means, but it's a voluntary organization active in disaster. You also may hear the term COAD, which is community organizations active in disasters. The difference in the VOAD is that the partners can be the same as a COAD, but the leadership roles and voting is restricted to voluntary nonprofit organizations. So, does anyone have any questions? I know that was a lot of information at once and I was going very quickly, but I'm happy to revisit anything that I discussed and answer any questions that you have.
Okay, I don't know if you, Stephanie, if you see that in the chat, Rebecca Cornwall just put in, that's really wonderful that your office collects data on unmet needs in between disasters and connects possible volunteer groups to meet these needs. We at 211 would love to collaborate on that and share unmet need data by county.
Yeah, so most of our counties do use 211. We had a couple of our counties where they felt like the 211 was not quite as strong in their county as some of the other platforms, but 211 is widely our our database for unmet needs. And that's what we encourage folks to do, is to call 211 and report that need first. One of the reasons that we do that is 211 is the hub for that. 211, they have it together. They know what they're doing. They know how to meet needs. But another reason that we push that is because we don't want to duplicate efforts. We don't want to be working on an unmet need that 211's also working on, or one of the faith-based groups is already working on. We want to make sure that our efforts are used wisely.
I just to add-
Also in the chat, if everyone will look back. What was that?
oh, I was just saying to add to that. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey,
I
Rebecca.
So home repair is one of our biggest unmet needs, and because a lot of older Alabamians can't connect it back directly to storm damage, they feel like they'll never get help because Rebuilding Together Alabama only takes applications for a couple of months a year. And so yeah, home repair, especially if we could get volunteer teams connected to those seniors, especially that have home repair needs, that would be incredible. So I'll send you an email about that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm really glad that Rebecca, that you mentioned that. Stephanie just mentioned the situation in Camp Hill. I don't know how many of you have been able to get to Camp Hill since that hailstorm happened, but they have still not been declared. I don't remember what the exact designation is, but they have not received federal funds for rebuilding. And so they are extremely vulnerable. They have people who are living in like a fraction of their house because so much damage was done. So there is an enormous need. And of course, since we're trying to keep people housed, we need to find ways to help people stay in the housing that they have to make it habitable so they can stay safely there. Also in the chat, you'll see, if you look back, you'll see that Tasha dropped the link so we can join VOAD. So she put that in there and we can send that out separately as well to everyone. Let's go to Eric now. And then if anybody has any more questions or comments, we'll keep monitoring the chat so we get everybody in. Eric Nankervis is with FEMA. He is an emergency management specialist, voluntary agency liaison, and mass care at FEMA. Eric, I don't know what mass care at FEMA means. I'd like to hear what that is. In this role, he establishes and maintains strategic partnerships between state, local, and tribal entities and officials, and the VOADs that we've been talking about. Eric provides technical assistance, guidance, and training to state, local, and tribal officials, field office staff, voluntary organizations, and other stakeholders, and assists voluntary agencies in the development of state and local planning groups, and makes recommendations on voluntary agency disaster plans.
Do I really do all that?
Well, that's what I've been told. So, I trust my experts. I trust my sources.
All right. Well, for what you all need to know, I report up to Stephanie. FEMA does not do anything within a state without working with our state partners. And that's the most important thing that I think I want to talk about is how we engage with the states. Am I able to do a screen share? I'm going to try.
Yeah, please try.
Okay, share. And slideshow. Let's see. From the beginning. Do you see a presentation?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So again, FEMA does not do a lot in states without the consent of our state partners, because it's up to the state to allow us to, as federal agency, to support what's going on. And we want to anytime and every time. However, it's, Stephanie is, when I say she's my boss, on this call, I defer to her. And if she tells me to be quiet, I have to be quiet. If she tells me to sit down, well, I don't have a chair behind me because I'm at a standing desk. So real quick, a couple things. FEMA, we have some core values that I want to share with you, just because I think people have a misconception about FEMA as big government coming in and trying to do everything that we do. And we have everything that we do working with the disaster survivors is through these 4 values of compassion, fairness, integrity, and respect. And I'll share this presentation later to make certain that you all have a copy of it. But we try to be respectful with the work that we do. We try to be fair with the work that we do, and most important, compassionate for those disaster survivors. In the last couple of years, we have really strived towards strengthening how we, FEMA, can instill equity as a foundation of emergency management. And I'll get into this in a moment, but we really want to make certain 1.2 there, how do we remove barriers to FEMA programs through a people-first approach? How do we meet people where they are when FEMA's actually brought into a disaster, and we can assist them to make certain it's equitable with everything else. The other thing I do want to point out, 3.1, strengthen the emergency management workforce. The mere fact that you have asked us as emergency managers to join this call today, you are now part of the emergency management workforce, because we are trying to educate you about what we do to be able to ensure that what you do helps with the clientele that you have. So you're now emergency managers. I now deputize you as that. I'm not going to go into this big giant circle here of what happens for a response or recovery, but when something happens, be it a hurricane, be it a tornado, 2 of the most largest events there in your state, the request comes from the local from the local emergency management to the state up to FEMA. FEMA, we take it to DHS. We have our recommendations. It goes to DHS, that takes it to the National Security Council, that takes it to the president. One of the things that Stephanie and others hear on the calls when there is a disaster quite a bit is what's going on within your, the different VOAD agencies. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Why we ask that is it goes into that report. We report what all of the VOAD agencies are doing up to the White House. So those that may be joining the VOAD, this is a great way to share the great work that you're doing with your constituents, your stakeholders, but also sharing with others what you're doing during disaster times for them. 3 different types of FEMA assistance: public assistance, hazard mitigation, and individual assistance. Individual assistance is the one where we work to support the disaster survivors, the individuals and the households with their disaster-related unmet needs. I'm not going to go into this. This is a whole 15 to 2 hour discussion around the sequence of delivery. But what you can see here in terms of how we try to make certain we're not duplicating benefits is everything starts with voluntary agencies and organizations and ends with voluntary organizations. It's the groups that are there from the get-go that really support the disaster survivors. And maybe in between, you have number 2, 3, 4, and 5, but not all the time. Because and in our southeast region of FEMA Region 4, a lot of the disasters that we have never have 3, 4, and 5 activated because the disaster is too small to actually warrant a disaster declaration on the federal level. And sometimes number 2 is not there because it's a home that is owned by someone and they have dropped their insurance. So we start with voluntary agencies and organizations and we end with them. And this is why it's so key to get more partners into the VOADs and the COADs. So a couple things that FEMA has done over the last couple of years to help disaster survivivors, we've expanded how owners and occupants can prove why they're in that house. A lot of homes in the South and in the Southeast specifically have been passed down generation to generation, and the title has never been passed, never been cleared to a new owner. So we're trying to make certain that we're able to help people be eligible so they're not denied FEMA assistance. We're trying to expand housing assistance and other needs assistance funding, trying to help people that can get cleaning and sanitizing assistance early on in the disaster so they can remain in their home before something happens where there may be mold or there may be other things that keep them out. And then we want to make certain that if someone has a disaster-related disability, we want to make certain that we provide for that. In the past, FEMA has not been able to, by law in the past, be able to assist for post-disaster disability. We could only help if someone lost a wheelchair before the disaster. They had a wheelchair because of before the disaster. We can help with that after. Now, if they did not have a wheelchair or need shower bars, we can assist with that. So we're trying to expand that. Here's the big crutch of what I need you all to know right now. And again, we'll send this to make certain everyone has this. There are 5 things to know because you don't need to be a FEMA specialist to help people when it comes to that disaster. If there is that individual assistance declaration and it's within a county that people reside in, apply for FEMA assistance. Document everything. Document everything. Take pictures. Tell people to take pictures of all the damages that are out there. It's not called a denial letter. It's called a determination letter. And sadly, a lot of times it is, you have been denied FEMA assistance is the first line. But it will state to you why. And sometimes it's because in that most difficult time of your life, when your home has been destroyed, you put NANKERIVS instead of NANKERVIS. And FEMA cannot validate your identity. You may switch 2 numbers in your social security number from 76 to 67 because you're stressed, It's as simple as that. Read that letter. Tell people to read that letter. If they don't understand it, call the FEMA 800 number, go to the Disaster Recovery Center, and go to the long-term recovery committees that are out there to support the disaster survivors. Number 4, if referred to the SBA, Small Business Administration, for a disaster loan, apply for it. That's part of the process. We want to make certain that those that are eligible for an SBA loan, SBA disaster loan, apply for it. It can stop other disaster assistance that may be eligible for those individuals. And if you finally don't agree with the determination, appeal, appeal, appeal. Each time you recommend to people to appeal, they have to have a new reason why to appeal, new information why they need to appeal. These are the actual takeaways I want you to have from this. 5 things to know. You don't have to be an expert in disaster management and FEMA individual assistance programs. All you need to know is apply, document, read the letter, and if you don't know what the letter says, ask questions. If you're referred to SBA, go to SBA, apply. And if you don't agree with everything, appeal. So I'm going to leave real quick here my information, and I will share this with the crew in a moment. Let's see. So stop share and going back for any questions that there may be. I have not seen anything in the chat because the way I was doing this, I cannot see the chat. So if there are questions, feel free to shoot them out.
Eric, thank you for checking the chat. I just looked at it and I didn't see any questions pop up. So
Okay.
I'm not sure we have questions. But it sounds to me like this is a lot of what Becky was talking about at the very beginning. Becky was talking about how she's reaching out to survivors in Dallas County and Elmore County and Autauga County and
Yep.
trying to encourage them to apply. It sounds like you're saying the same thing. We need to encourage people to apply.
Apply, apply, apply.
Okay.
And truly, I'm covering. I'm wearing my FEMA logo here, but I'm covering it up for a second. That determination letter that a lot of people like to call a denial letter. Someone ran it through a. We're being recorded. Okay. I've said this before on the record. Someone ran it through a reading. You know, what level is this? And it's at 13th grade. And we can't have that. You know, we FEMA are trying to figure out how to make it more easy to understand what it means for that letter, that determination letter, because there's so much information in there. And the majority of people who receive that letter, and it says in the first line, you have been denied FEMA assistance, because they want to make it, lawyers say, we have to make it very clear from the get-go. We're trying to make it so it's more understandable, but sometimes it's as easy as 2 letters in your name or 2 numbers in your social security.
Okay. So one of the services that we can help is just when a client comes to us with this problem, we can help them make sense of this letter or refer them to FEMA to get more information.
Refer them to FEMA, or if there is a long-term recovery group within the county that is, you know, that's serving the disaster survivors, getting them into that disaster case management program that the long-term recovery committee may be able to assist with.
Okay, that brings up a question. what is the case management program? Like, do we call 211? And does Becky put us in touch with the case management program?
So I'm going to there is a federal disaster case management program that is requested by the state after a federally declared disaster, but sometimes there is on the local level, the long-term recovery group doing local case management. I'm gonna turn it over to Becky. Sorry to punning it to you, Becky, but
211 is a great place to get the information, but we were lucky enough after this last bout of storms, the Alabama West Florida Conference of the United Methodist Church applied to UMCOR for a grant to do case management. So they're doing disaster case management in every county except for Morgan County, and that's because Morgan County is not in their conference. So we are super lucky to, in my opinion, nobody does disaster case management better than the Methodists do. So.
So I can neither confirm nor deny that, but I gotta say that the Alabama West Florida Conference of the United Methodist Church is incredible with the work that they do. And really want to, I will give them props from here until I die, because of the work that they have done in the Panhandle, the work that they have done in Alabama. But I cannot say that they're the best, because as a federal employee, I cannot promote one group over the other.
Well,
Yeah.
I can say it, and the Alabama West Florida Conference, this is not the first time I've worked with them. They are awesome, and we are super lucky to have them.
Excellent.
Can I just add on as somebody who works in the local 211, and just for some folks, I know when I first started working in the VOAD world and the disaster world, some of this kind of went over my head, and it wasn't until I actually was in it, which wasn't very long after I got to HandsOn River Region that I was in it, that I really understood what a lot of this meant. So just to be clear for everybody, some disasters do get declared by FEMA, some do not. There's different, and Eric can speak to that better than I can, but there's different requirements that go into those disasters being declared, and he hinted to that when he was going over the slideshow. But long-term recovery committees can be formed whether a disaster is declared in the area or not. That is a local recovery committee. Long-term recovery committee is exactly what it is, long-term. So those are several years in the process for people to be made whole. And so, as Becky mentioned, there sometimes are people who are renting that their landlord decides, hey, I don't care anything about trying to fix this. It's going to cost me too much, whatever. I'm not getting any assistance to help fix my stuff. And that person is left out on their own. There are other times where, people do have FEMA assistance and can get some financial assistance that's been FEMA declared, can apply for SBA, things like that. But that, it's up to the community whether a long-term recovery committee is formed. But there is one now in our communities for Taga and Elmore County because of the January 12th tornado. And so, they can be connected. As Becky said, they're having a hard time getting folks to understand that the long-term recovery committee is here to help, maybe because we haven't needed one in quite some time. But that has to be formed by your local community. It's not something that just automatically stands up or is even standing up depending on where you are. Just wanted to kind of throw that out there because I don't know that everybody quite maybe understood that, or I know I probably wasn't the first time I heard it. So.
And that's something that, Stephanie and I are able to assist with, or Stephanie and my team. Some of you may know Chris Baker. He's deployed out to Mississippi right now, but, helping with the creation of those long-term recovery committees is something that the voluntary agency liaisons really, strive for. The more we have those networks in place before disaster, as you mentioned, Tasha, the more impactful it's going to be after. So I see a hand.
Yes, it's probably mine. Can you hear me okay? Can everybody hear me? Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. My Shannon Randolph, and I know you don't know me, but kind of new to this. And I just wanted to throw something out there. It may be a discussion for a meeting 2 months from now. But I'm new to the American Red Cross, and there are a team of 3 of us here in Montgomery County who are part of a community adaptation program, which is straight from national headquarters. So we are all new within the last year and really had no Red Cross experience before that. But one thing that we're working on in community adaptation, we're trying to strengthen our community in Montgomery County, starting in Montgomery County, but sure to spread further than that later. One thing that we're trying to work on is a possible resiliency hub in Montgomery County, or many of them, or several of them. And the people we've talked to who have done this successfully so far were in Louisiana, where they are just now recovering from Hurricane Ian. And this hub is a place where they do lots and lots of FEMA paperwork. And I just wondered if you all have had any experience with that in the past in Montgomery County or surrounding areas, or know anything about previous, hubs that we've had, charging stations, places people can go in time of disaster, or to help with recovery paperwork or referrals to the right organizations.
I am not familiar with having done that here in the Montgomery County area. Stephanie, have you seen that?
Shannon, if you would like to email me offline, I can try to link you with all of the information that you may need, or at least the information that I can give you. And I can touch base with some of our partners and try to help get you some more information. Yeah.
So I think Becky, who's facilitating, had to jump off. Is what
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Eileen. She had something come up, so she had to jump off. We've heard of all of our presentations, and I think we've gotten some of the big questions asked. We've got some more conversations that we'll need to take care of later, but to be respectful of our time, we do need to end now. Is there any last thing we need to talk about? Has anybody got something we want to say right before we go? No?
Yep, just real quick, actually. Just wanted to quickly introduce myself. First of all, I just want to say thank you all for a good meeting. I appreciate all the information that was shown for. And my name is Dr. Daryl Case. I am the new program coordinator for MACH. So you guys will be seeing me around in the future.
We're very glad to meet you, Dr. Cates.
Thank you.
I don't know if you saw that, but Tosh just said, welcome to MACH. We look forward to working together. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and we will have another resource hour in 2 months. And we have many more things to talk about. There's huge needs in our area, and we can only solve these problems by working together. Yeah.
Outstanding.
Thank you all.
Dr. Cates, are you going to turn this off? Eileen?